Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in today. I actually have Ken Puls here as a guest who's going to walk us through some tips in Power Query, and specifically one on a practice on when you're wanting to create a new query off of an original one when you're wanting to combine the data between multiple queries. So Ken, really interested to hear what you have to say about this.
Awesome. Thanks, Reed. Thanks for having me back here. It's been a while, and yeah, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Ken Pulse from excelguru.ca and skillwave.training, where we actually teach people how to do some of this. So,
Excellent.
um, I don't know if it makes sense for you. Do you just want to hop into a demo here? Yeah, perfect. Here we go.
Yeah, let's do
So,
it.
so let's. I've got a couple of tables here. I've got a transaction and a chart of accounts table, and I'm going to show this in Excel. Although the same things happen inside Power BI Desktop, but there's a specific menu that actually happens in Excel that you can trigger here. You don't see in Power BI Desktop. It has the same effect. So we'll start with this one here. Is I have two tables. I've got my transactions table and my chart of accounts table, and I want to merge them or append them or do whatever I want to do with them. So one of the options that comes up on this when you right click on it is that you can go and you can actually merge directly from here or append directly from here. And these are options that I actually refuse to ever use in the real world. The more I've worked with Power Query, the more I actually would like to remove these from the menu altogether. And it's because of the behavior of what actually happens in them. And I'll show you really quickly here what happens is if I choose merge, this will pop up a nice little box here where I can go and say, hey, I want to merge this to the chart of accounts table. This has a composite key that needs merging. So I'm just going to grab these two, hold down my control key and select them in order. And I'm going to do a left outer join. And this is fine. The records don't all match, but that's okay. It's not the point of this one here. When I click OK, what's going to happen is I'm going to launch into Power Query here. And what you'll notice is that I have one step here and it says source. And within that source, what happened? And if you're trying to audit this stuff back later, this is really, really hard to see. You don't know that this is coming from a single table or if it's coming from multiple tables. Is it an append? Is it a merge? What is it? The only way to find out is to go over here and click the gear icon. So at that point, it'll actually bring up the merge. Or, of course, if you know how to read the code, you'd have to read the code up in the top here.
Mhm.
So for this reason, I'm not really a big fan of using that entry point. So I'm going to delete this query right now. I'm going to show you how I prefer to do this. You can do this through the Excel user interface or within Power Query, it doesn't really matter. You'll notice that if I go right click on this, I get the option to reference, and that was in the original menu as well. So I've got my two tables here. There's transactions brought in from Excel and the chart of accounts. And I do things this way, right click and reference. Within here, I now get my original output. So I'm gonna call this one nice because I think this one's the nice way to do things. From here, what I can do is I can now go up to merge queries. I'm going to click on that. Notice the big block of it. It brings up the same pieces that I had before. So we'll go and grab COA, hold down my control key, select the columns to join on. And you'll notice that the big difference here is that when I click OK, I now have my original step source as well as a new step that tells me exactly what's going on. So if you ever come back and you look at the way that I build queries, what you'll find is that my source step in 99% of the time generally points back to a specific query. The only times it really doesn't is if I'm building a list on the fly for something specific. So with this, I now have a very, very nice audit trail that I can read really easily. Now, let me show you another way to do this thing. And this is something else that I see a lot of people will do as well. It's kind of funny because if I'm in a course, I'll bring someone over to the transactions table and say, okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to right click and we're going to reference, and then we're going to choose this merge queries. And I always get this query question of, well, would you like to choose merge queries or merge queries as new? And I'm not sure what it is around teaching where people try really hard to find that little drop down button versus clicking the big piece right here, but they do anyway. So let me show you what happens when you do this instead. So let me just clear this out for a second. So instead of choosing right click and reference, I'm just going to go to transactions and say merge queries as new. Notice that just like the behavior that we saw in the
Mhm.
Excel queries and connections pane, we bring up that same merge dialog. So if we now go and say, let's grab our chart of accounts, grab these individual pieces here and say, okay, what do we get? A single source that has the gear icon. So when you compare this back to, I'm just going to call this ugly. When you compare it back to nice, we've now got two steps. When you compare it from the merge is new, we get this ugly thing that's only got one. So obviously with all these things, I mean, you need to sort of guide yourself accordingly as to what you're actually playing around with. But for me, in most cases, I'm going to build something, and like I say, most cases, 99.9% of the time, I'm going to build something that goes this way because I think that that audit trail is really, really important. This is one of the big things that's been a challenge with Excel for years is nobody knows what you did. Having this nice, clear trail behind you to explain it to somebody else or remind yourself down the way, I think is really, really useful.
And this also applies to append as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, this data is not really well set up for append, but I can absolutely
Mhm.
do this, right? So if I go to transactions here and I go to append, if we look really hard for the tiny little drop down, we have an append queries is new. If I were to go and say, hey, I don't know, let's append transactions and transactions. I've never had a business reason to do this, but why not? So at this point here, when we go in, once again, we get a single step, and if we
Right.
have to click on this to actually see what's going on, versus the alternative is to go and say right click, reference this, and then within here, go to append. And now we can say, hey, let's go and append something. I'm going to append COA just for fun on this one here to make it a little bit different. But again, what you can see is that we end up with two separate steps. Now, on this one, I do want to call out something kind of important here too, because I've seen workbooks where, let's say that in your appends, you'll get something like, you got a January table, a February table, a March table, and so forth. One of the things that happens in append is that you also have the ability to go to three or more tables. So you can actually go and start appending all kinds of things. So if I want to go and append another transactions in here and another COA, I think I've already got that. Oh no, it will let me do it twice. There we go. Again, I've never had a business reason to do this, but you can actually, append multiple things in. If you do this, once again, it keeps them all in one step. So
Mhm.
this is one where I'm not going to say you should never do multiple queries in one step. I don't think that's entirely accurate, but I would say that you want to be really careful when you're dealing with these things. If I have a finite number of queries that's never going to change, I might combine them all in one step. If I have, an append of, I don't know, quarter one, and then I'm going to append quarter two, quarter three, quarter four, those I would tend to do individually because I want somebody to know that I've made explicit steps for certain reasons along the way. On the other hand, if I've basically got two things that I'm going to append together and it's never ever going to change, let's say three, for example. So I would append those three, but I might leave myself just a quick note. And of course, the properties window is going to come up on my other screen. Here we go. That's better. I might leave myself a note in here to say, what I've actually, what did I do here? Just to let people, what did I do here? I can't talk and type at the same time. I might leave just a quick note behind just to give myself an idea as to what the heck I was actually thinking to
Mhm.
help people sort of understand. I don't tend to rename steps often, although if I do, in these cases, it would be, appended January, appended February, appended March to give a little bit of an idea. But I'd certainly try and leave the verbiage here as close to what the user interface naturally generated, just to make it easier to read things back later on. So,
Yep,
um,
and the built-in node is very hidden in the properties pane. I always love
mhm.
showing people that just because like the discoverability of it is almost zero. And people usually do not go poking around and clicking every single button in a query landscape.
No, absolutely. I mean, the other cool thing about this too, just for fun on these ones here, is that if you hit your Windows period, you can also go and use
Mhm.
your emojis, right? So if I want, I don't know how a monkey is actually going to show up in this one here. Oh, hey, look at that! It actually worked. So I don't usually use monkeys when documenting my queries, or at least I do, but for monkey tools. So you can actually put in arrows or different things in this as well to sort of help call out some of the steps from each other, which is kind of a neat little trick. But yeah, the documentation part here is underused. I think if you're building a query that you're going to be trying to pass off to someone else, or if you're building something really complex and just need to leave a note to yourself because you're not going to be coming back in for a year and you're not going to remember what the heck you did because it was so complicated, right? So
Exactly.
yeah.
Like why is there a buffered table step right? Oh
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Why did I append a table to itself? That makes no sense. Yeah, exactly. So
Exactly.
for sure.
No, this is a good takeaway. Is like you said, the lineage and kind of history of being able to have clearer steps that walk people through that, especially if they have the formula bar turned off at the top, goes a long way to I think helping people,
Of course.
or helping yourself, and also being able to hand that off. So I
If
think
you have the
overall,
if you have the formula bar turned off at the top, though, you really need to go to the view tab and turn it back on. I mean, it's an essential part of this
yeah.
user interface, right? For sure. But no, absolutely. I mean,
Yeah, we for us definitely that I will say a lot of individuals who are self-taught in Power Query may or may not have that turned on. But if you for anybody watching, if you don't have that turned on, it is that, and even sometimes some of the column quality and profiling also can be really useful just to be able to do quick scans of your data.
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah. And I mean, at the end of the day, right? I mean, this is all about trying to make sure that not only can you get your job done, but you leave yourself some hints behind because you know that when you're coming back to review things, when are you going to be doing it? When you're under a time crunch and under pressure,
Mhm.
and you don't have time to relive and remember everything you did. So, more hints you can do along the way where, you separate the steps out or leave yourself some good notes. Just, the better experience is going to be when you actually have to revisit the solution and maintain it. So, or if somebody else has
Exactly.
to. So, yeah.
No, this has been great, and I think uh, as you mentioned it, I think at a minimum, if you were to do those merging steps, it would be nice if they at least updated the option from the context menu where it would go source to whatever the top one is, or whatever the left part of that join is going to be, and then just add a two-step process, or just get rid of the the steps entirely.
Yeah, I agree, and I mean, one of the things that's a real frustrating piece to me is that I mean that source step. You can go right into the M code if you want to get really, really crazy with it, and you can rename that step to whatever you want. And the first step of your query, like when it pulls that, will always be called source. There's no way around that, and that's pretty frustrating. So, by having that separation, I think is really important for me when I'm auditing something. I just click on a source step and go, okay, what table did that one come from? Cool. Then what did you do to it?
Mhm.
And that's it unfolds the story in a more logical way as to what's going on rather than bringing somebody into a story partway through and they're going, wait a minute, I missed the whole background of these characters, what's going on, right? So yeah.
Agreed. Very cool. Yeah.
Cool.
So, Ken, I appreciate you coming on and sharing this, and it's one more good a little bit of a tool that they can take away with them to add to their toolbox in terms of ways to build out the most efficient, optimal queries that they can, especially with good quality lineage in terms of the transformations that go from start to finish. So, thank you.
Absolutely, yeah, no worries, happy to be here.
All right, everyone, take care. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to like, comment, or share this video. Plus, if you have any comments for a future video, go ahead and add that to the comment section down below. Now, if this is your first time to my channel, or you want to see more of these awesome videos, please click that subscribe and notification button. Also, feel free to show your support by becoming a channel member.